I've played tons of games, but my guilty pleasure growing up was arcade titles, and in a modern emulation environment, we can finally sit down and enjoy these games without shelling out tons of money, and in the comfort of our homes. Some people even build their own custom cabinets. That being said, today I'm going to talk about 10 arcade games you should check out. Let's begin. Capcom made some badass beat-em-ups. You know, it's funny, everyone talks about Street Fighter 2 so much, and more often than not, they ignore the other games that Capcom pushed out, many of which are absolutely wonderful, especially in the early 90s. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is a beat-em-up, and it's based on a comic book, Xenozoic Tales, written by Mark Schultz. It even had a TV show, toys, you name it, candy bars. It existed. Pretense of the game is that in the 26th century, a gang called the Black Marketeers starts hunting dinosaurs, and because of that, they're pissed off, as they should be. So we can choose to play one of 4 amazing characters to beat the shit out of the mercenaries, as well as some dinosaurs, specifically Jack Tenrek, Hannah Dundee, Mustafa Cairo, or Meso Bradovich. Each of the characters have their own special moveset, and this game is phenomenal. You should check it out. Also, feel free to check out any other Capcom beat-em-up. You won't be disappointed. Now, this game did have a sequel. It's on the Sega CD, but it's a rail shooter. Also, it was programmed by Elon Musk. True story. He worked at Rocket Science Games, the developers of the second Cataclysm, prior to becoming an entrepreneur. I love shooting games, and that's a trend that you'll see quite often in this episode, and it all started with Galaga. Galaga is a very important game to me. I even have it tattooed on my body. It's important to me because it was the first arcade game that I ever popped money into. My dad guaranteed that. It was his favorite game too. Now that I think about it, my journey started with my dad, and even though he's just a memory on the horizon of my life, I still pull it up every now and then. Sometimes I wonder if he would be proud of me, that I'm more than the kid who could never make it past stage 6. Galaga is one of Namco's greatest contributions to the arcade era. The way it plays is so simple, it's satisfying. Bunch of enemies come in, they stack up, they come after you, and if you leave 2 of the bigger enemies, you can get stuck in a tractor beam, and then rescue the other plane to have 2 planes combined, which will absolutely decimate the opposition, if you can keep it alive. Galaga as a legacy franchise has been somewhat neglected, however the most recent game was Galaga Wars, and it's on the iOS. No thank you. The last proper Galaxian title, which is the name of the franchise, was Galaga Legions DX on the 360, and it's just a twin stick. Oh well. We all know Pac-Man. It was one of the most influential cabinets of all time, much like Asteroids from Atari and Space Invaders from Taito. With Pac-Man, Namco again brought us years of joy and entertainment from a simple game that was simply cathartic. I'll be honest with you, I didn't cut my teeth on this one in the arcades. Instead, I cut my teeth on Pac-Man with a handheld LCD game released by Micro Games of America. I believe it to be this one. It's not even a good version of Pac-Man, but it was enough to make me want to play it as I got older. Now, I'm much more of a fan of Ms. Pac-Man, but Pac-Man alone is worth its weight. Simply get the dots, avoid the ghosts, and if they get too spicy, eat a power pellet and fuck them up. Plain and simple. Pac-Man, much like Galaga, has gotten quite a suspect treatment throughout the years with subpar console releases, and the most recent game was Pac-Man Museum Plus, which is actually worth picking up. It's a phenomenal compilation of 14 Pac-Man games throughout the years. Created by Xylec, Zenitone, and Konami, Whiz Quiz is a simple quiz game, no more no less, and while you likely wouldn't have entered an arcade in 1985 for the sole purpose of playing a trivia game, I actually enjoyed this. I love having my knowledge challenged. That's just something that brings me joy, making sure I remember things. There's not much to say about this game, but if you want to add some pizzazz to your MAME cabinet, maybe consider adding this one. How about a game from SNK? SNK is notorious for making games that make you want to use your nuts as a screwdriver. They are painful, unfair, and most of the time they have a really bad token economy. But sometimes you luck out. Ghost Pilots is an example of one of those games that are genuinely fun. It's just a shooter with multiple bomb types going up against the Nazis during World War II, so in some ways, it feels like SNK's take on the 19XX series from Capcom. That's just one of many shooter franchises that SNK put out. Another one that I talk about often is Strikers 1945 1 and 2, which is a wonderful game, albeit being on the Neo Geo. This one is worth playing though. Arrow Fighters or Sonic Wings, depending on where you live, is one of the most wacky, awesome shooters I've ever had the privilege of playing. The most attractive thing about it is that there is an amazing combination of endings, characters, and airplanes to choose from. If you want to learn more about every single game in this franchise, I actually played all of them and made a Series Slayer entry about it. I'll link it down below in the description. Now in Arrow Fighters, we could choose from 4 different people, player 2 can also choose from 4 different people, and each of these characters have their own fighters, with their own unique abilities. For example, Blaster Keaton of the US flies the F-18 Super Hornet, while Mau Mau flies the Mitsubishi F-15 Eagle. It's a really cool game, and the first 3 stages are selected randomly, and it continues to loop, over and over and over again. To truly beat it, you only need to play it twice though. The most recent game was the nail in the coffin for the franchise, Arrow Fighters Assault on the Nintendo 64, which tried to contend with Ace Combat, but the Nintendo 64 just couldn't handle what the devs wanted to do. It's a shame too. Data East is one of those companies that can be incredibly hit or miss, and more often than not, in my opinion, they miss. But again, that's just my opinion. I'm sure you absolutely love Data East and their esoteric games, but I usually tend to avoid them. However, I encountered a game called Darkseal that really captivated me. It's like Gauntlet if you didn't have to pay per second for life. It's an isometric RPG beat-em-up with 4 epic characters that travel dungeons and has a solid 2-player co-op. Now, Darkseal was released in America, but it was known as Gate of Doom, which I haven't checked out, but honestly I didn't need to. The Japanese version alone was awesome, which sucks because Capcom's D&D games tended to overshadow this one, as they were also beat-em-ups with RPG elements. We covered a few vertical shooters, how about a horizontal one? I'm not big on horizontal shooters as I am with vertical ones because I feel in horizontal shooters, you have your wings clipped by the death zones above and below, and that can be incredibly frustrating. The only safe haven you tend to have is that horizontal shooters usually feature really badass power-ups. You kind of make up for your inability to move, and Thundercross was Konami's take on that. If you think of Konami, you likely think of Gradius. Well, this is more like Carrier Air Wing with Gradius-styled power-ups, and it's a blast. Big bosses, big power-ups, they can make a game really fun and worth your money. Have you ever heard of Galaga? They have a really silly name, but a lot of these games are incredibly fun. Desert War is an example of a game that I could burn tons of money on. It's a vertical shooter where we need to not only take out enemies, but also find prisoners of war and drop down and pick them up. It's like a modern day choplifter without all the antiquities you would find with the older game. For 1995, this is pretty damn good, and Galaga is a company that consistently surprises me when it comes to the arcade spectrum. If you see their name, you should be in good hands. Period. The sequel to 1942 was highly anticipated because in the arcade world, the original run of Capcom's arcade titles put them on the map pretty squarely. Be it Sansan, Vulgus, 1942, Section Z, Commando, and Ghosts and Goblins, of which 1942 was one of the most successful arcade cabinets in 1986, which is quite an accomplishment. 1943 is that sequel that people wanted, but it is different in many ways. We still have the ability to do loops, but this time there's lightning involved, which consumes our fuel, which is one of the things that kind of irritated me because fuel acts as a life force in this game, meaning you only get 1 life per credit. But I'm okay with this because the power-ups more than make up for it. There's also another version of this game, 1943 Kai, which is a Japanese exclusive alternate version of 1943. To me, it's equally as fun, and it's more enhanced. It has more levels and original music. Both of these games are worth checking out if you like vertical shooters. And that's enough from me. Did you see any games that you remembered? Feel free to comment down below. I'd love for you to share your memories with the community. Also, I'm getting really close to 4,000 subscribers, and if we can manage to snag that milestone, I'll be sure to do a really special video that you all will be able to vote on. So if you're new, please consider subscribing to the channel, or even showing your friends. Finally, the most important thing you can do to support what I do every single day is to hit that thumbs up button. It helps with visibility for the channel. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.